Good evening. I would like to call to order the February 8th, 2021 work session of the York County School Board. As we approach the middle of February and we've started the second semester, the end of the school year is getting closer. It is hard to believe that we're closer to the end of the year than we are from the beginning of the year at this point. But I would once again like to extend appreciation to our families, students, teachers, and employees for their support and flexibility during this challenging time. We remain committed to moving safely forward with our focus on the best interests of our students and staff. I do want to remind everyone that this is a work session. Typically, our work sessions will meet in the school board office or downstairs in the work session boardroom here, but because of the COVID protocols, we are up here in the main York Hall to have a little bit more spacing, so that's why we do not have a public comment period, because this is still just our regular work session. Also, per the governor's orders, individuals must remain masked when indoors and within the presence of others. However, that mask mandate includes a provision to remove masks when communicating with individuals who are hard of hearing. To ensure that our closed captioning is able to accurately capture our presenters' comments, staff will remove their mask at the podium, as it does have the additional barrier in place. I also would like to make you aware that Ms. Geraltz has requested to be allowed to participate in the meeting from a remote location, and I will read a statement relating to Mrs. Geralt's request. In accordance with School Board Policy BDD, she is unavailable to attend the meeting due to a temporary or permanent disability or other medical condition. She asks that the board approve her participation through electronic communication from a remote location, specifically from her home address of 100 Leanne Court, Yorktown, Virginia. Ms. Geraltz, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Could I have a motion and a second to approve Ms. Geraltz's participation?
I make a motion to approve Mrs. Geralt's participation in the February 8th, 2021 work session electronically from her remote location of 100 Leanne Court, Yorktown, Virginia, due to a temporary or permanent disability or other medical condition.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Ms. Ford, can you please pull the board?
Yes.
I'll second. There was a second.
Yeah.
Okay. A motion was made by Mr. Schaefer and seconded by Mr. Myatt to allow Mrs. Geraltz to join the work session remotely. Mr. Richardson?
Yes.
Mr. Myatt?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Higginbotham?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passed 4-0.
For our first presentation today, we have a reopening update. Dr. Shandor, would you please share some more information?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Higginbotham. Good afternoon, board members. We have 7 presentations tonight, so we have 3 informational updates, the budget presentation, as well as 3 strategic plan updates. So leading off this evening is going to be Dr. Carroll, who's going to provide some information related to our reopening update. Dr. Carroll?
Thank you, Dr. Shandor. Chairman Higginbotham, members of the board, tonight I bring you another update on our progress with reopening. Okay. Get this up here. First of all, I start with some good news. You'll remember 2 meetings ago, about a month ago, I came to you and said we would hope to have a date or a window of vaccination last meeting or this meeting. And I'm pleased to report that we have completed the first doses for the staff that would take one last Friday. Now, I also want to take this opportunity to thank again Mr. Neil Morgan, County Administrator, and the emergency management staff who helped us get through this, working with both the City of Newport News and with CNU. To date, we have given first doses to about 1,600 of our 2,500 staff. Now that 2,500 is everybody. It's all inclusive, full-time, part-time, temporary, substitute, just everybody that is affiliated with the division, and about 1,600, so that's about 2/3 of that staff. But more importantly, just short of 90% of all the full-time 10, 11, and 12-month staff that are actually in our school buildings accepted the invitation for vaccination. Now, that number is a little bit soft in the sense that because of HIPAA requirements, we don't know who actually got them, but that's the percentage that accepted the invitation, indicated in some respect that they were going to go and get that vaccination. So we're really happy about that. But we will never have any hard numbers to that effect, but we know that we invited them. Now there's phase 2 to vaccination. And I'm also pleased to report that our school nurses, you'll remember, were in the 1A group, and they actually got to start earlier. And they were given the Pfizer vaccine that only has a 3-week turnaround. So we actually have school nurses that have already gotten their second doses last week. And then the bulk of the rest of the staff received the Moderna, which we hope or we project would be completed around the end of the month. Now, that's dependent on a number of things. First of all, vaccine availability, that has been inconsistent to date. Also, the dates that our people received on their cards is the first date they could get it. Now, we will not have any role in the organization of the second doses because that's all run by the emergency management working with the health department. Therefore, those people that receive their first will get notification and then work with them to get their second dose. And there will be, our understanding is anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks of extra time to reach the full protection of the vaccination. But I need to caution everybody to be prepared for the fact that we may have some very short temporary closures. One in which when people make those appointments for that second dosage, we don't know how that's going to fall and how that's going to hit a building, and we do want our staff to be able to get that as soon as they can because that gives us extra utility later on in the school year. Therefore, if a staff is hit with too much staff needing to go get their vaccination, we may have a remote learning day that day or a closure. And then also, we do already anecdotally see some people that are having some reaction, a significant reaction that would cause somebody to call out sick that next day, and that we can have some problems with that. And that's going to be a little bit unpredictable, but the community needs to know that we are going to face that a little bit, but it should be very short-lived. Also, there has been a lot of emphasis recently, and I believe it's for those that have not been vaccinated yet, but we find ourselves in possession of quite an inventory of 3-ply disposable masks. Now, they are disposable, but we do have a good number of them. And now that our staff is working towards getting fully vaccinated, I am going to release those this week to staff members, and every staff member will be able to get at least 5 of those to help get us bridged to that time where we can have our second dose, and that way they don't go to waste. And so we're going to be taking those steps this week. I do want to talk about where we're at with our health metrics. And you see that things are starting to look a little better, but the cumulative has reached an interesting benchmark. So today, the active positive cases, and just a couple of days ago, that number was in the 30s, which is where we've been pretty much since winter break. And 16 or high teens is where we were between the Thanksgiving and winter breaks. So we are starting to see, well, at least this is one data point. It was in the 20s yesterday, so we'll see if that holds. But this is an indication that the positive cases are starting to fall. It is becoming clear, and I'll have a graph for you later that talks, I've been talking about the third wave and where we've been at with that and looking for that to kind of crest and start to come down. Let's see, and then quarantines. We hit the benchmark of 1,000 total quarantines since we've reintroduced students into school, and that's, most of those you can see, 682 of them from community exposure, 326 from exposure within buildings, and so we've hit that benchmark. So here's the graph I was talking to you about, You see clearly, the first wave was kind of late October, early November. You see in that early part of December, a definite curvature there from the second wave. And then this third wave really taking hold in January and working through the beginning of February. And so this is based on our quarantine data, so how it's really been impacting us. This probably won't reflect exactly what the health department would show. But what we are seeing here, and we hope that this trend continues, is it does appear that the backside of the curve is advancing much quicker than the rise to the crest of that curve. That's enlightening and enheartening. Now, on this slide, I did not include our regional metrics. You know, at every meeting, I give you it has the arrows and tells you which direction things are going. The Peninsula Health Department is not going to be providing that information to us anymore. You know that most of it is live on their website, but they're shifting their resources completely to the vaccination effort right now. So we're going to lose some of that support that we've enjoyed since the summer. And we do know how they've arrived at those numbers, and we will still post them on our website. But that larger peninsula number that we depended on them, we'll derive that ourselves. But we are losing that kind of weekly conference call that we had so that they can devote themselves completely to vaccination. But I would share that where the active cases in York County peaked about a month ago in the early, the low 800s, around 834, today's York County number was at 562 per 100,000, and the larger peninsula number is somewhere in the mid 600s. So we are seeing it as a region start to decline. You'll also remember that I talked to you last meeting about the need to close schools because of our staffing capacity. And you'll remember that I defined that as a lack of coverage equals closure. That's kind of the easiest way to remember that. And we are to a point now where we're starting to see those slow down again, and that's good news. And I wanted to give you where we were at as kind of a catch-up. So to date, we have completed the following short-term closures. We had 7 classroom cohorts. That would be a 2-day pod that needed to be closed, but the other pod for that teacher didn't. We had 7 of those. We had 5 classrooms that had to close for a period of time, both cohorts for that teacher. We had 1 complete grade level that had to close, and we actually had to have 2 school-wide closures just in the recent weeks. As of today, all of those have cycled out except for 1 school-wide closure, and that will cycle out on Wednesday. You will see a note there that on those 2 school-wides, they absorbed 3 cohorts that would have also been there. So if we talk about total numbers, it would have been 10 classroom cohorts, but 3 of them were absorbed into school-wide closures. So you remember I shared this graphic with you at the last meeting, which is new from the new VDH/VDOE guidance. And we remain where we were at that last meeting. It was just 2 weeks ago. But I do want to give some clarity as far as transmission within the schools. The difference between the low and the medium category actually has quite a difference to it. And outside of athletics, we have only had 1 suspected outbreak since returning students to buildings. Therefore, I wouldn't put us on the whole in the medium category, nor should we be in the low because of that definition. So we're really kind of on that threshold of low to medium, or if you look at it a different way, some schools have been completely low and other schools would qualify for the medium. So as a whole division, we can't be in either camp. Last meeting, I also talked to you about the other 2 criteria here, and that's student absenteeism and staff capacity, and we are where we were 2 weeks ago. Student absenteeism is still below 5%, so we're in good shape there. And in staff capacity, we remain at critical. This is the issue that we are grappling with. I'll cover this more in depth in my closing remarks, but to give you context, we usually have a substitute fill rate. That's where you take the total number of absences, teachers and paras, and in recent years have gotten that to about a 90% level. The last week of January, we were at 50%, and that was with a reduced need because we just don't have as many classes going. So on any given day, if we need 100 substitutes to fill those gaps, we're getting about 50. And so that means that the buildings are having to cover that in some other fashion. And so that's what we talk about when we're talking about a lack of coverage or a lack of staff capacity. And we consider that to be in the critical range because you'll remember when I first gave this to you, the state does not define critical or strained or normal. This too was a new matrix that I shared with you last week. And we remain in the upper right-hand, top right-hand corner where our mitigation strategies are working very well. So we're at the best level there at the top, but we are also in the highest level of community transmission. And I told you that today's level was at 562 in York County, mid-600s in the region. Therefore, that's 2.5 to 3 times higher than the threshold for highest, which is defined by the CDC. However, this is what we're doing is we're trying to get everybody into class that we can, and we remain there. So for next steps, this is the same slide that I shared with you 2 weeks ago. These steps remain that I outlined at that meeting as we look to gain some traction with one of two things, either vaccination or further lowering our community transmission. So in closing, there has been a lot of political discourse in recent weeks from President Biden, the new CDC leadership, and Governor Northam about their expectations about opening schools and mentioning a March 15th date. They've also discussed the growing accumulation of scientific studies that schools are safe places and that school systems should get students into school, especially the most vulnerable. This echoes what we've been saying and our actions have been since late fall, that we believe that in-person instruction is better for our students and that we trust in our mitigation practices and that we are seeing very low transmission in our buildings. With that said, I want to caution the public that when these leaders speak about returning students to school, they are describing what we started in late September, September 28th to be specific. We don't want the headlines to be confused with the reality. I will remind the board that our hindrance to further progress is available staff. Our next goal is adding grades in the 7th to 11th grade range to hybrid instruction. We are, however, still in a pause status, waiting for further lowering of that community transmission, which will reduce demand for our current available substitutes and additional staff to become available after vaccination. More specifically, we will be monitoring these data points that determine the level of school impact caused by heightened community transmission that I defined earlier. Community transmission appears to be falling. This should have a positive effect on the number of staff quarantines. Reductions in staff quarantines combined with less illness should have a positive effect on our substitute fill rate. Post-vaccination, there will be or should be additional staff, permanent staff with underlying health conditions who will be able to return to the classroom in person. Also, there will be some substitutes that will be able or choose to come off the non-active list. We are working on a determination of the scope of that additional workforce now, and in the short run, we will be following specific data points closely, especially the substitute fill rate. That concludes my report, and I welcome your questions.
I have a quick question about, you were talking about when we don't have subs, when we're at that 50% fill rate, and we have those classes that need, an adult with those students. When we don't have the subs, we have teachers during their planning that are covering, administrators, people like that are
Yes,
having
we
to
have
step up.
principals in teaching classes, we have teachers covering each other, some that may have a duty at that time that are forgoing that duty to get into the classroom because that's a larger need. And it gets to the point, whereas with the 2 school-wide closures or with a grade closure, if we just can't do it, then that's when we would invoke that rule. There's not enough coverage, it's not safe, therefore we have to close.
Okay.
I'd just like to make a comment. I appreciate your clarification with the governor's ruling that this is something we've been doing since September. We've been trying to get our kids back. That's what we all want here. I know. I think everywhere wants it too, but I think the division has been pretty committed, and it's been pretty evident through the transparency of every couple of weeks we've been getting these updates, and we're doing what we can to try to get as many kids back into the school as we can. And I think there's a misconception too. Getting back into school may not necessarily be 5 days a week. Trying to keep the mitigation standards up and the separation and the distancing and social distancing and and so forth. So I do appreciate your work on that. I know it's been cumbersome. It's been tiring at times, I'm sure. But I appreciate all your work in that. And as soon as we can get them back, we definitely want them back. We know that.
Well, thank you, and I would add, Dr. Shandor, I think it's 40% of divisions haven't returned any students
Yeah.
to,
There's 40 divisions that
40
haven't.
divisions, not percent.
Right.
That
But
haven't.
it's out of 132.
That have not seen a child back in a building.
Yes. And so to contrast it, we are light years ahead of the state suggestions now, and most of the state, as well as most of the country, actually. So I think that we're doing the best that we can, and I look forward to getting all the grades in as soon as possible.
One last quick comment. One of the keys with regard to our strategic communication has been target dates. I would still like to pursue that, look at that closely, particularly with the steep decline on the backside of the curve, and then Dr. Carroll, all the other pieces you mentioned. So I don't necessarily want to leave that off the table. I'd like us to consider that again as we continue to communicate, gives folks opportunity to lean forward and be prepared.
Yes, sir. I mean, there will be dates in the future at some point. Just right now, we can't project where that's going to be. We do have to remember, things are falling, but we're at such a critical stage that we just can't project where and when that's going to be.
No, thank you.
Ms. Geraltz, do you have any questions for Dr. Carroll?
Yes, please. So the fill rate of 50%, is that counting classroom facilitators now that we've hired some?
Yes, that would, I want to confirm with Dr. Vladu, that would,
It's a hard vacancy. If there isn't anybody in that classroom, then it is a unfilled substitute position, so it does include facilitators.
yes, so it does, just in case she can't hear, yes, that does include facilitators.
Okay. And are we finding at the secondary level that it is easier to fill these spots than it is at the elementary level?
That's a difficult thing to gauge. I think most of the time, elementary is an easier one to fill, but we only have 2 grade levels at secondary, so that's kind of a difficult thing to gauge. I mean, if we're going straight off percentages, yes, they are lower than the elementary right now. So, until we start to get more students in school, and there has been a hesitancy from some substitutes to deal with, the virtual learning. They are more comfortable coming in and substituting for a live person and students being in the room as opposed to working with a class over computer.
Okay. Also, I know in the past, since the beginning of this, we've announced, dates at meetings instead of sending it out when we weren't at a meeting. And so I know a lot of families that are listening, we're not giving a date tonight. They might feel exasperated or frustrated. Is there the possibility that we would be able to announce not at a meeting?
Absolutely. Yeah, we
Great.
can certainly do that. Again, I think slide 12 of Dr. Carroll's presentation, where he lists the reduction in staff quarantine, substitute fill rate, the increase of staff on site, and increase of substitutes post-vaccination. Once we have an opportunity to have that data and review that data, that will provide a much clearer picture so we can put a more accurate tentative date out there. And again, I think to echo what Mr. Richardson said, we want all of our kids back in school.
Right.
And we're gonna do that. We just have to make sure we keep moving at a good pace and make sure we look at all the information to inform us to make those decisions.
Yeah. Now, I would add, we're not going to wait for a meeting to
Right.
get that news out there. A lot of that's been
Appreciate
coincidence, plus we've been meeting every other week.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Carroll, for that update. Our next presentation is on the operating budget. Dr. Shandor, I believe you will be presenting some information on this topic.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Richardson, there, I said it. Thank you, Mr. Higginbotham. I made it through the first meeting and then I just blew it. All right, we're going to let Mr. Bowen have an opportunity to come to the podium. He's going to run the slide deck for me, and he's going to also co-present some information. Give him a minute to get settled. All right. Thank you, Mr. Higginbotham, Ms. Geraltz, and school board members. It's my privilege to present my FY22 proposed budget. Before I begin, I want to thank Mr. Bowen for leading the work in this budget cycle with YCSD. I also want to thank our cabinet members, executive team, our principals, school staff, and community members. All of these folks participated in the process of providing us information to guide the budget. I want to begin sharing a few successes as well as some areas that have been challenging for us. So first, our team shared some of our school successes with you earlier this year during our strategic plan updates and during our joint retreat with the Board of Supervisors. I'll briefly recap some of those now. As you can see on the screen, our on-time graduation rate is 97%, obviously clearly above the state. We have included the progress of a few subgroups this evening to share, as you can see as well. You can see a 7.6% increase for our Black students, 11% increase for our economically disadvantaged subgroup, while our English learners saw over 16.5% increase and a 7.8% increase for students with disabilities. We're certainly proud of all these results and realize that it takes a lot of hard work from a lot of people and a lot of our families and kids to achieve those results. Also, we're proud of the class of 2020, earning scholarships and awards over $20 million last year, so we're really proud of the class of 2020. And while normally we would not be highlighting school closures, of course, having to close our schools during the Grafton Complex fire and during the pandemic is not the highlight. It's the hard work and long hours by our dedicated staff members that's worth highlighting. The last 12 months have been far from ideal, but we certainly can't say thank you enough to our staff members. So looking at our YCS, some of the challenges that we have in the division. So enrollment during this fiscal year has been unpredictable, as you've heard Mr. Bowen share for many months in a row. Given some of our situations with kindergarten, with homeschool and private school, some of these students may return, some of them may not. So that's certainly unpredictable. Also, when you think about this, if you recall, the last several years we've had the national teacher shortage as an issue. This year, we're really highlighting overall staff shortages. We have shortages with IT positions, custodial positions, bus drivers, paraeducators, the classroom facilitators. That's just to name a few, so that's certainly an issue. Also, each year when I do the budget presentation, I do share the top 10 critical shortage teaching endorsement areas in Virginia, so I'll list these for you quickly. Number 1 is special education. Number 2 is elementary education, pre-K through 6. Next is middle education, grades 6 through 8. Next is mathematics, grades 6 through 12, including Algebra 1. And 5th is career and technical education. So those have been pretty similar over the last several years. So just a couple other items that we're going to talk about, YCSD challenges, would be our changing demographics. I have a few charts and graphs I'll show you in a minute. Obviously, our school board, it's important that we maintain our competitive salaries for staff members. And then, as you know, the reductions in state funding have continuously increased pressure on our local government. So here's some data that, again, Mr. Bowen has shared over the last 5 to 6 months regarding our average daily membership. So looking at our student enrollment, if you look at the column third from the right, 210, that would be original, so that's our 21 FY21 original ADM. And then next to that is 21A, which was our 21 actual ADM. You can see there's a pretty stark decline there of 870 students, which we've shared with you through the school year. So for FY22, our ADM will be up about 152 students. So we're looking at about 12,420 students. Next, when you look at our changing demographics, over the years, the impact of the special education teacher shortage has been compounded by student growth in this area, especially if you look from FY14 to FY20. This continues to be a challenge for us, particularly in recruiting special education teachers and paraeducators. Looking at our economically disadvantaged population, these are our students who receive free and reduced lunch. You can see there's an increase there in the numbers of 320 students from FY20 to FY21. And finally, in taking a look at our English learner population, we have had a small decline since FY19, but it's still significantly higher, obviously, than FY10. So we're looking at a decrease from 20 to 21 of about 26 students. All right, so let me jump into our projected revenue. So the state revenue is based on the governor's proposed budget. So we're looking at an increase of 2.1% that's based off of the projected enrollment, additional increases for compensation, and the standards of quality updates. Next, as you can see, a small change in adjustments for federal grants at the federal level of $213,000. Federal CARES, just want to remind the board that we have received a little over $2.8 million for CARES funding in FY21. The amount showing here is our most recent allocation and will be utilized to support the FY22 budget. Next, the county administrators indicated that $1.6 million is our working number for us to build this budget. And indirect costs, this is a new item in the budget for us. So essentially, we can recoup the local costs associated with administering federal grants. So our total revenue increase is $5.9 million. So we always look to identify areas of savings as well. So our staff attrition projection number this year will be $800,000. So the net additional resources is almost $6.8 million. We utilized the same budget process as in past years. We held virtual community budget sessions. Our staff and community members had an online opportunity to submit suggestions. We asked 19 principals to work with their staff and their leadership team to provide input, and each of our department leads submitted budget needs. Overall, we had 96 suggestions that totaled over about $6.8 million. After collecting all this information, input, and feedback, we conducted a comprehensive review of the submissions. We continue to bucket these in 3 priority areas as we've done in the last few years. Retention and recruitment, instruction and learning, and compliance and safety. So we'll take a deeper look at these priority areas as I share my recommendations. So one of the board's belief statements in our strategic plan states that recruiting and retaining a highly qualified and diverse staff are paramount to the success of our students. Therefore, it's critical that we continue to provide competitive compensation to keep and attract the very best. So when you take a look at this slide, you can see that my recommendation is a 2.5% average increase. Licensed staff would be 1.5% average with a market adjustment of 1. Non-licensed staff, 1.7% market adjustment of 0.75. Bus drivers and assistants, 1.5 with a market adjustment of 1. Next, we have the quadrennial review, which is what we do each year. So all positions in grades 13 through 16 of our pay grades were reviewed. Adjustments have been made to those positions that qualify under the market value, and you can see that total is $27,000. So under instructional and learning, the items in this area align with goals 1 and 2 of our strategic plan and allow us to expand our efforts. K through 12 in preparing students for career and college success in alignment with the profile of the graduate. There's additional instructional positions included in the budget, but the first 4 are mandated. So 2 school counselors, 1 media specialist, and an occupational therapist. The next position is 1 grant coordinator, one network engineer, and a lead psychologist, moving that position as an upgrade to 12-month position. And that would be so that they can assist in the summer with evaluations, attending IEP and eligibility meetings, as well as planning for the upcoming year. So now I'm going to ask Mr. Bowen if he will cover the federal grant section as well as the post-retirement earnings program. Mr. Bowen?
Thank you, Dr. Shandor. Mr. Higginbotham, members of the board. First, let me start with the instructional support for federal grants line item here for $1.1 million. As Dr. Shandor mentioned earlier, the school division has received a second allocation of CARES Act funding. This $1.1 million represents the unobligated balance of those funds. Currently, we're waiting on additional information and guidance from the Department of Education concerning summer school, or what we've heard of as an extended school year. And we're also hopeful that with that guidance may come additional funding. However, if funding does not come with that guidance, then these funds will be available for a robust summer school program, or any unspent funds through the summer program could be extended throughout FY22 for additional remediation and supports. And then on the post-retirement retirement earnings program, this is something new that's to the school division. However, there are many school divisions throughout the state that have similar programs. This particular one is modeled after a school division in Richmond. The proposal for year one only includes teachers. However, if the program is successful, we would look to add other groups such as paras, bus drivers. I will add that the school divisions that we talk to actually include all of their employees, excluding the superintendent. But what this program entails is, a Plan 1, a VRS Plan 1 teacher is eligible to retire at age 50 with 30 years of experience. However, that's too early for many of us. Many of us can't afford to retire that early. It's often difficult for teachers to retire at 60, and you imagine 40 years of service at 60 years old because they haven't reached the Social Security or Medicare age. So the idea here is to provide some financial incentive for that teacher to retire, and then on the backside, they would work for the school division for 30 days per year. The retirees participating in the program would work on a schedule as determined by the building administrator, HR, and the retiree. The retiree would earn 16% of their final VRS compensation, and again, in return, they would work 30 days for the division. Now, you've heard Dr. Vladu and Dr. Carroll mention throughout the pandemic our challenges with substitutes. So what this program would do for us, and what we intend for it to do, is to create a pipeline of qualified instructional substitutes. These would be seasoned YCSD teachers that know our systems and technology, they know our policies and procedures, they know our staff, they know our students, and they know our families. So the retirees could work on a schedule on days that there are often challenges for us with our normal sub pool. These are Mondays and Fridays, which are typical high days and needs for subs. These are long-term opportunities. So teachers that are out on either long-term illness or maternity leave, we need a qualified, experienced substitute to continue the instruction in the class. Retirees could participate up to 5 years. However, participation is not guaranteed. The retiree must be in good standing with the division at the time of retirement and must maintain that position of good standing throughout the participation of the program. If the retiree does not maintain the work requirements, they can be removed from the program. Now, for year one, we budgeted 20 teachers for participation. This is slightly higher than our normal retirement number for an average year. And the program would have to be renewed annually by the school board as part of the budget process. And that concludes my comments on that.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Appreciate that. So the next item on their Technology 101 program is $197,000 in hardware to support our one-to-one program. As far as New Horizons, this increase is based on our 3-year average of students participating in the career tech ed, gov school programs, and special education. For pre-K, we have a $100,000 increase in the pre-K program. And then finally, MAP testing. So MAP testing, that's a reading and math map assessment. It provides growth measure data and progress monitoring. The results can also serve as an additional universal screening and eligibility tool for gifted children. So the cost is $63,000. We have $34,000 in the testing budget, so the recommendation is for an additional $28,500 to support this annually. Next, under compliance and safety, you can see we have $1.5 million for our health insurance cost, increase in our health insurance cost, just over $100,000 for the minimum wage increase, $20,000 for hygiene supplies for schools, as well as $10,000. Again, that's a slight contract increase for our athletic trainers with CHKD. So to recap, you can see the total funds available along with the expenses for each of these three priorities. The total expenditures of close to $6.8 million. As you can see, this proposal contains no budget gap. So our bottom line is more than $155 million. It's a 4% increase from FY21 budget. The budget will enable us to continue moving forward with the work of the school division, specifically accomplishing the goals of our strategic plan. So next steps, we have a school board hearing scheduled for February 22nd, followed by the work session on March 8th, and then the school board would adopt the proposed budget on the 22nd of March, and then the school board would adopt the operating budget on May 24th. So at this time, Mr. Bowen and I are available for any questions you may have.
I have a question about the prep program that you were describing. So you said like the employees might be available on the difficult days to get subs, like Mondays and Fridays, but there is a give and take between the building administrator and the employee, right? Like if the retired employee had to be out of town for a week or something like that, that it would be okay to let them know in advance that they wouldn't be available that week, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, again, part of this program is building that sub pool. So certainly if it's a seasoned YCSD teacher, we're sort of growing our own sub pool, for lack of better terms. Certainly that communication with the administration is important. So we would certainly work with them on that.
So it's just 30 days throughout the entire school year that they work for that 16% salary or whatever we would pay them that's allowed through BRS for us to do.
That's correct. So, give me an example. We could have a retiree who wants to work the Monday, Fridays, and then they would work 30 days throughout the year. And then you might have one that just wants to work that long-term opportunity, that long-term sub-opportunity, but they could only work 30 days of that long-term sub-opportunity.
And it really just depends. If it's a secondary teacher who wants to pick up one section, then you look at it by hours, and we can, compute that so that we can have somebody cover a section for us for high school.
Okay. Perfect.
Any other questions?
Ms. Geraltz, do you have any questions?
Yeah, my question was about the prep program as well. You said surrounding school divisions have already implemented this. Can you, just off the top of your head, tell us which those are?
Yes, Roanoke County, Henrico County, Chesterfield County, I believe Prince William and Loudoun County. Those are the ones that run similar programs or have some type of retiree. The one that's modeled exactly like ours is Henrico County. And just from experience there, it's a very, very successful program. Again, they allow all their employees to participate, and those employees that come back, or those retirees that come back, provide critical services to fill in gaps where it's needed. So for non-instructional people, they come to work at the school board office to work during the summer when it's audit time or when it's budget time, or when they're working on IT projects or other big projects. Curriculum writing, they'll bring retirees in to help with curriculum writing and development. So just a number of things. It doesn't just have to be exclusive for subs, but our intent in year one is to certainly fill out and help us with the sub issue that we currently are faced with.
Any exception to the 30 days, Bill, that you know of?
We've had that discussion amongst the staff, and that would be something that we would need to consider, because certainly we are limited with budget. And how we plan to pay for this is there's going to be the attrition by a senior teacher retiring at a high salary and then backfilling that with a lower paid teacher. So that savings will ultimately pay for this program. However, if we start extending beyond the 30 days, then we might run into budget issues. But if we continue to have problems with subs, we do have a sub-pool of budget that we could pull from if we needed to in emergency situations like that long-term position.
Yeah, budget constraint, not a VRS constraint, for instance. Okay, that's good. Yeah, thank you.
Is it like a 1-year commitment, 2-year, 3 years if you retire a little bit earlier to join the prep program? Is it like a year-to-year thing, or do you buy in for a certain amount of time?
Well, it would require the board to approve it annually.
Okay.
However, the way it's proposed is that a teacher or retiree could participate up to 5 years.
You just have to approve it each year through the budget process.
And do we expect the possibility of it just growing bigger over the first couple of years as we have more people retiring and possibly going into it?
Certainly, if it's successful, we would recommend expanding the program, but we can grow the program however it fits our need. This really is, we're proposing this to our benefit. We have some issues that we need to address, and we think that we can do this through this program. So if we want to keep it exclusively to the instructional section or to instructional
years as we have
department, we
more
certainly can do
people
that.
retiring
We don't have to
into it.
expand
Certainly,
it
if it's
to
successful.
non-instructional staff members.
Ms. Geraltz, do you have any other questions?
Yes, I know that if you're watching the news, where there might possibly be more federal money coming in, Mr. Bowen, and I'm assuming that will change the dynamic of this budget, and we'll be meeting again and you giving us updates as we go. Is that correct?
That's correct. We will have updates throughout the spring, and then the board will be asking the board to adopt a final budget in May.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think the same applies to the state, too.
Yes.
Thank you for the update on the budget and keeping us all informed. Our next presentation is about calendar planning. Dr. Shander, would you like to share additional information on this topic?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Higginbotham. We're going to ask Dr. Aaron Butler, who is our Director of School Administration, come up to the podium and share some information related to calendar planning. Once Dr. Carroll's done cleaning.
My second job.
Thank you, Dr. Butler.
Mr. Higginbotham, members of the board, and Dr. Shandor, thank you for this opportunity to provide an update concerning the development of the 2021-2022 division calendar. In developing the annual division calendar, we aligned the work of two committees. One is the York County School Division Committee, which is made up of various stakeholders across the division. We also work with the Regional Calendar Committee, which is made up of neighboring school divisions, so that we can align our calendars to maximize the attendance and instructional hours for our students participating in New Horizons Regional Education Centers, which include the Governor's School and the Center for Career and Technical Education. The Code of Virginia was amended 2 years ago to allow all school divisions to begin the school year up to 14 days before Labor Day. Based on this change, we administered a community and stakeholder questionnaire to gather feedback on the possibility of a pre-Labor Day school start. A summary of some of the comments that were made in that survey, when we dissected for favorable to a pre-Labor Day start, many of our respondents said that it would help them to align more closely with U.S. colleges and other southern states, particularly for our military families that might transfer in or out during this time period. It also would allow for additional instructional days to help mitigate summer slide and align with other parts of the state which do start before Labor Day. In addition, there was concerns about maintaining the consistent major breaks for our families around the winter break and Thanksgiving. There was many comments about ending the school year earlier, and then also provide some additional preparation days for our students who are taking AP testing, the SAT, those students in the IB program. And they also asked, we consider looking at an October or a fall break for students and staff. When we looked at those reasons why it was unfavorable to start before Labor Day, there was concerns that it would interrupt family time for summer breaks and vacations. It would conflict with those parents who do have older siblings that are taking them back to college during that same time period. Due to the nature of our economy, There was concerns about the impact on local tourism dollars and summer jobs for students, childcare concerns, and then the interference with our summer programs and extracurricular activities that many of our students engage in during the summer months. So as we begin working on the 2021-2022 calendar, we are looking at possibly beginning 7 calendar days, which would be 4 instructional days earlier. So we would start on Monday, August the 30th. And we would look at some of the possibilities. By doing that, that would allow us 4 instructional days for some flexibility. So we can look at some of the things that were brought up in the survey, such as allowing for maintaining the breaks for families, particularly around winter break, and if we want to extend the Thanksgiving holiday. It would also allow some additional instructional days. In light of the impact of COVID-19, there was some comments that were made about can we do some things to try to mitigate COVID-19 slide for students by bringing them in a little earlier to get some assessments and instruction done prior to Labor Day so we can map out the rest of the school year. And so there were many things that were brought up, and so we do have our calendar committee this week so we can talk through some of those possibilities and some of those advantages. But however, we will also look at a post-Labor Day calendar just to see what are some of the traditional benefits and challenges of engaging in that process. So I thank you for this opportunity to provide an update on the development of the 2021-22 calendar. I am available for questions if you have any.
So when I look at, you're right, I think the pandemic now, those are the primary drivers. I'm sure you would agree, Dr. Butler, and you mentioned some of that. So more robust summer school program, extended school year perhaps, depending on the governor's approach. How about student performance? Is that data that will be readily available to the team? I know it's not going to be available, next week, but.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, Ms. Skinner is actually going to present a little bit of information to you this evening. The semester did just end, so we just got the results. I think report cards were today. So we'll have updated information for you at the next meeting related to semester grades because we just got that information. However, she is going to share some information with you this evening. And yes, we'll be making decisions around summer school based on that information, that's for sure.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thanks.
So if with the calendar update, if we're looking at starting normal after Labor Day, we would end the normal time sometime mid-June. If we started the 4 days earlier, we would end earlier.
So when we looked at the development of the calendar, there's a possibility of ending a few days earlier, but 4 days is not going to provide the big impact that we were looking for. I know that's one of the concerns that came up when we did the survey back a few years ago. In order to do that, we really would need to move into the 14 days before Labor Day. And so this would kind of be a test to kind of start moving that process along so we can get our families used to or accustomed to starting the 14 days before Labor Day.
And it would depend on if you did the longer break in the fall and that sort of thing. I understand.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm interested to see what you come up with and see what the
Yeah,
possibilities are.
that 4 days may not get you out earlier at the end of the school year,
Right.
but it may provide you, a week potentially at Thanksgiving.
Right.
Or,
Which might be good for families.
reinstating, help me out, Veterans Day.
Veterans Day.
Thank you. So it may provide you some more flexibility, but it's certainly worth having our calendar committee review.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Geraltz, did you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Butler, for that update.
Thank you, Dr. Butler.
Next is an instructional update. Dr. Shandor, would you like to share some details on this topic?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Stringenbotham. So I was just mentioning Ms. Skinner. She is now going to present some information related to instructional results and grading. So, Ms. Skinner?
One moment. I think, Dr. Carroll, you clicked the, here we go. All right, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shandor. Good evening, Chairman Higginbotham and members of the board. Tonight, I'll provide you with a brief update on the academic performance of our students, as well as some of the action steps that we are taking to support teachers, students, and our families. Last Monday marked the start of the third quarter and second semester of the school year. That being said, I'd like to take just a quick moment to recognize our teachers, administrators, and our school board instructional staff for all that they are doing to ensure our students have a high-quality academic experience. Even with this challenging instructional models and the changes that we face this year, our staff continue to find ways to engage our students in meaningful learning experiences. Tonight's presentation will include several instructional updates. First, I'll share some of the supports that we have put in place to assist students and families. Our school division has done a lot of work around assessment and grading, and I'll share some of those highlights with you. On-time graduation continues to be a top priority for us, and I will give you an update on some of the actions we put in place to ensure our students stay on track for graduation, as well as some of the actions from the Virginia Department of Education that are going to help support us along the way. And finally, as I shared with you in the fall, students in grades 3 through 8 were given the measure of academic progress assessment for the first time this school year. This evening, I'll provide you with an update on their performance on that assessment. As Dr. Shandor shared a few minutes ago, student report cards were issued today in Aspen, and during our next work session, which will be, I believe, March 8th, I'll give you a more detailed update on our quarter 2 and first semester student progress. As a school division, we continually evaluate our student progress and assess how we can better serve our students and families. The next 2 slides will highlight some of the specific actions we're implementing to help our students be successful this school year. One of the most successful impacts that help our principals monitor student performance is Power BI. Our building administrators use this data daily to monitor student learning as well as to help and coach our teachers. Our schools continue to support students and families through student success plans. These are developed by school-based teams to assist students who are struggling academically, have become disengaged, or demonstrating poor attendance. Based on parent feedback, the school division has modified expectations for Wednesday work. This change has been well received, with students having more time to work on long-term assignments, seek academic support, and meet with teachers and counselors. Each of our schools are continuing to provide in-person instruction for students who need additional support on Wednesdays and other days during the week. And at the end of quarter 2, the school division also built in some additional asynchronous learning days for middle and high school students to allow them to work on quarterly assessments, complete missing work, and final assignments. This also helped our schools bring in students who needed additional help and teacher support before the end of that first semester. Similar to quarter 1, we've adjusted the grading window and giving students 2 additional days to complete assignments. That's why it ended on Friday, and report cards were issued today. With the return of seniors to hybrid instruction, the high school bell schedule has been adjusted. This now mirrors our typical instructional day, so students have more time in their classrooms with their teachers. I'm also excited to share that we've been able to expand our e-tutoring program, and you'll see that's the flyer there, to all students in middle and high school. And that information is being sent home or has been sent home through schools. We're going to also share that through our division information. There's a link there for the students. All they do is click on there and they can set up a tutoring appointment. And as you know, the elementary students in the hybrid model have 3 days of asynchronous instruction during the week. Based on our teacher and our parent feedback, we're continuing to provide additional support to our students on these days. This slide will describe a couple of those things that we're doing. First, our YCSD staff have collaborated to develop weekly STEM lessons that are available to students on asynchronous days. These are interactive lessons where they pair a fiction and a nonfiction text together with a STEM learning experience, and I have seen those firsthand myself. They are really engaging and really fun for the kids. The school division has also created an African American History Resource Center in Canvas to provide instructional support to our staff. In there is some curated content for grades K through 12, and we're also using this to specifically support our asynchronous instruction. And then while our original plan was to not use concurrent instruction for elementary, we were really focusing on the face-to-face and the asynchronous. We've had many teachers who've begun to use that concurrent instruction successfully. And just so, in case our viewing audience doesn't know, concurrent instruction is when a teacher is teaching a group of students face-to-face while students at home are learning at the same time. And so this month, our division is going to offer a 3-part training to our teachers. We actually are going to ask those teachers that are being successful with the concurrent instruction to model that and to give some tips and tricks to our teachers. And then we also have a group of teachers that are going to be sharing how they use pre-recorded lessons to enhance asynchronous instruction. Like many school divisions across the state and the country, we are concerned about student performance and engagement. To help ensure student success, our school division has been monitoring and providing support for assessments and grading to our staff. The next part of this presentation, I'll highlight a few of those action steps that we've taken to support our students and teachers. As I shared earlier, Power BI provides our administrators and counselors with daily updates on student progress. This information helps our counselors monitor student grades so they can quickly act to provide assistance and resources to both students and teachers. On January 12th, a grading focus group came together comprised of teachers, school counselors, principals, and division administrators to review division data and current research on grading practices. This group developed a list of key ideas and suggested reading practices for remote and hybrid learning. We shared these with all teachers in a document called Second Semester Grading Guidelines, and that was shared about 2 weeks ago with our teachers. To further support teachers and administrators, the division has offered additional PD entitled Practices for Hybrid and Online Learning Environments. I was excited to see we had over 600 staff members attend that. It was optional, but we had over 600 staff members in attendance. And we, based upon the feedback of the people that attended those, we're actually offering a Canvas course now on grading to our teachers to further support them. Our school division takes great pride, as Dr. Shandor shared earlier, on our on-time graduation rates, and we are committed to ensuring our students remain on track for graduation. As we gradually bring back grade levels to hybrid instruction, we continue to bring in our students who are most vulnerable and require additional supports. We have students coming in on Wednesdays as well as some of the other days and in the afternoons to receive additional support from our teachers and our counselors. Each year, we hold ongoing meetings to assess senior progress towards graduation. This year, we started those meetings much earlier, and they were actually going to increase in frequency now that second semester has started. During those meetings, our team members meet and they discuss specific supports. They discuss student by student exactly what those students need and what supports we need to provide to them and to their families. And then, as I shared earlier, we have been monitoring student grades closely, and we anticipate that we may have more students at risk for failing first semester than we've had in years past. Our school teams have been developing a plan to offer grade and credit recovery opportunities for our students. Our goal is to provide our students with the opportunity to re-engage and to demonstrate proficiency of course content so that the students can finish the year strong. And I'll be providing more information on that for you in March when we meet. Just like last year's closures, VDOE has provided school divisions with various waivers and emergency guidelines to help assist us in getting our students to graduate and have a successful school year. On this slide are just a few of those. One, that they have waived for seniors the requirement for first aid, CPR, and AED. They've also waived the CTE credential for seniors wishing to receive a standard diploma. They're giving us some flexibility with high school science and history tests, allowing students which of those options to take, which course to take their SOL test. And they've given us some options on local alternative assessments for grade 4 history, grade 8 civics and writing. And we are going to take and use those options. Instead of giving the SOL test, we're going to give our students some alternative assessments to help them. And then they've also provided us with some options for awarding locally awarded verified credits for students as well. And then last but not least, we've also been given a choice on whether we want to offer expedited retakes this year to our students in grades 3 through 8. And we will be sending more information out to our families about all of that soon. And now I'm going to turn over to MAP, Measures of Academic Progress. At the start of the school year, VDOE encouraged schools to identify a method for assessing student progress in reading and math. We chose to use the measure of academic progress as our growth assessment. We administered the reading assessment to all students in grades 3 through 8 this fall. The MAP assessment is a test that is used to measure students' growth in mathematics and reading over time. Because it is norm referenced, it provides a comparison to other students across the nation. This test provides a percentile score as well as something called a RIT score, and parents will hear more about that when the report comes home to them. That RIT score really is a zone of proximal development level. It provides that to the teacher, who then can use that information to help prepare lessons that are aligned to those students' needs. Another benefit of the MAP assessment is that it does align to the Virginia Standards of Learning. And we plan to use the data that we collect from these assessments to help us determine where our students' strengths are, where their weaknesses might be, and how we can help identify and fill any learning gaps that they might have. Additionally, the information we gather from this will help us, as you had questions earlier, about identifying summer academy needs and also making recommendation for advanced coursework for our students. And finally, we will review the division level information to look for any adjustments in our curriculum pacing for next year that we might need to make. Students in grades 3 through 8 that took the MAP assessment this fall will receive a fall reading report this week. And that report, there's a sample here on the screen for you. Since this is our first time really giving this assessment, parents will see the reading assessment percentile score for their students. But when they get this report again in the spring, they'll see a growth assessment for their students in reading, and then that'll be the first time we give the math portion of the test, so they'll get a percentile score then. This slide shows how our students in grades 3 through 8 performed on the measure of academic progress fall assessment in reading as compared to the national norm. The norm mean is the average RIT score for students who were in the same grade and testing administration term. And as you can see on this chart, the national norm RIT score is in green, and our division mean RIT score is in purple. And on this chart, you can also see that our division RIT score exceeded the national norm for reading at all of the grade levels. Our schools have already begun using this information to individualize student learning and provide targeted remediation. So as I mentioned earlier, quarter 2 and first semester report cards were shared with parents today. We're in the process of finishing up all of our other reading and math assessments, and you can see those on the screen. We're finishing those up now. So during our March 8th work session, I plan to share our student progress data with the board, which will include reading achievement, our math benchmark data, and other assessment results. I will also provide some information regarding Summer Academy at that time. So thank you for allowing me to give you this instructional update. I'll take any questions that you might have.
Well, you know, I have a comment. So, just briefly, you know, as board members and even parents for that matter, we strive to look for, you know, select themes, right? And continuous improvement, whether at the school division or any major organization, is what you really desire and what you're looking for. And it resonated with me that we see that continuous improvement through student and family engagement. And you talked a little bit about the feedback on the Wednesday work sessions, making adjusts on that. The e-tutoring initiative is one example. We're routinely identifying lessons learned and best practices that we're turning back to our teachers and staff through job aids, and then of course additional professional development and instruction. So I'm extremely pleased with those kinds of initiatives. And again, this theme of continuous improvement, and as we learn, to make sure that that we identify those best practices and reintroduce them to the team. And then obviously the MAP testing, and aggressively and proactively search for those measures so we can provide student assistance as we need to. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a question about the Power BI
Yes.
system. With the ability to get information so quickly with just a couple clicks, are we monitoring like the progress from the interim period to the end of the marking period so that we see the growth? Because I know as a teacher myself, I'll put in that 0 for a student who didn't turn something in, and that sort of motivates them to get it, turned in quickly, or I might have to reach out to the parents or the students a couple times, and I know the teachers here are doing that, and sometimes pulling these assignments off the kids, kicking and screaming to get their grades up. I just know it can be scary at times to go in and look at stuff. So are we monitoring that progress and that change?
We are. Power BI allows us to not only look at how our students are doing on, a quarterly basis, but we actually have daily updates. Our Power BI updates 3 times a day. And our principals receive weekly reports that they look at and they review, and they meet with teachers to see how their students in that particular class might be doing. We offer additional supports to them. Some of the directors that are here tonight, they meet with principals on one-to-ones weekly, if not bi-weekly, to talk about the progress of their students. So it's kind of an all support. Everyone's around this supporting each other. The Power BI just provides us to have that quick access to information so we can quickly give a call. We don't want 2 weeks to go by before we reach out to a family to say, we noticed your student wasn't engaged. We want to reach out to that family as quickly as possible, and it gives us the opportunity to do so.
Well, how successful is the response that we've had to this,
To
the progress monitoring? We get the information quickly, and then we address it. How has the progress been since?
We are seeing, I will tell you, I monitor as a division daily, and we have seen some declines in our students and grades as far as declines in students failing, things of that nature. We are seeing some of the grading guidelines that we put in place, thanks to our teachers and our counselors that really worked with us and helped us design some of those. And we've seen a lot of positives that have come from that as well. I think we're going to continue, as we shared, we are reflecting on our practices. We're looking at teachers that are being very successful. We're trying to bring them in, share their successes with other teachers, and trying to just look for continuous ways to improve.
Thank you.
Ms. Geraltz, did you have any questions?
It's a question mixed with a comment. I was able to go in and kind of check out the Power BI system, and it really is impressive. And so I know that that's the way that you guys have the pulse on grades, and from a teacher's perspective and a student perspective. I'm just wondering if we have any way to monitor the emotional well-being of our kids besides through our guidance counselors and their personal contact.
We do. We've done quite a bit of training with our teachers on social emotional learning, and we have one of the largest ways we do that is through our school counselors. Right, they're working in conjunction with our teachers. So if we see a student who's not engaged, that team is going to reach out to those students and they're going to have conversations with them. So it's important that our teachers are monitoring what's going on in those classrooms, whether online or in person, and that they're in constant communication with administrators and counselors. It's kind of a wraparound type of services. We're also currently, we have our design lessons that we do with our students that I shared a couple months ago with you. And then we also have division-wide teams that reflect on how that's going across our school division. So they're meeting to have conversations around this as well. What school is being particularly successful? Let's share that with the other schools and what they're doing. So it's constant just monitoring and reflection and discussion. I don't know if that answered her question or not.
Yes, thank you.
Are there any other questions from anyone?
Well, I'll make a quick comment. I will tell you that I was able to see firsthand how nimble that our academic progress has been when we had students that were in trouble in high school, that they came in on Wednesday. And that was one of the first things that happened, and I saw that a while back. So it's like teachers and administrators are taking the bull by the horns and doing everything possible to make kids successful. And I thank you for that.
Absolutely, they are. We have teachers coming in and working with kids in the evenings. They go to their homes to deliver things that they might need. There's just a multitude of ways that our staff are reaching out to help our students and support their families.
right, well, thank you very much, Ms. Skinner, for that presentation and that information. The next presentation we have is a strategic plan update for Goal 3, Objective 3.2 on retention and recruitment. Dr. Shandor.
Thank you, Mr. Higginbotham. We're going to, again, give Dr. Carroll an opportunity to clean the podium. We're going to have Dr. Amanda Corbin-Staton come up next. And she is going to present some information related to Goal 3 of the YCSD strategic plan, looking at recruitment, retention, and diversity of the division.
Thank you, Dr. Shandor. Oops. I'm so used to talking through my mask. Thank you, Dr. Shandor, Chairman Higginbotham, and members of the board. Tonight, I will be sharing a strategic plan status update on components of Goal 3 as we recruit, hire, support, and retain a diverse staff that meets our highest standards. In previous strategic plan updates related to this goal, I've shared research from the Governor's Advisory Committee on Virginia teacher shortages, which essentially says that out of every 100 classrooms in Virginia, there is one teacher vacancy. As you see on the slide, for this school year, we began with 8.23 teacher vacancies. And as Dr. Vladu shared in an earlier update this year to the board, these vacancies emanated primarily from late resignations after July 15th and new allotments as our enrollment settled. Recognizing that the entirety of K-12 schooling since March 13th, 2020 is currently incomparable to any previous experience we have lived through, our efforts to ensure that all of our classrooms are staffed on day one remain, as well as all of the support that we put around recruitment and retention of our staff remain as well. So since FY18, you will see that about 51% of our licensed new hires have come from our surrounding districts, and just under 20% come from Virginia college programs. So therefore, as the majority of our new hires come from surrounding districts and Virginia college programs, it is imperative that we remain present and competitive on the job fair venue and recruiting circuit. In November, we held 2 non-licensed job fairs in the upper and lower parts of our county, and these job fairs were focused on recruiting substitute employees, bus drivers, and custodians. And I would like to really commend all of our departments that worked together to ensure that we were able to hold this event outside. So we were able to adhere to all of the CDC guidance and everything of that nature. We were very fortunate to be blessed with a wonderful weather day that day. Since FY18, though, on this slide, you will notice that our non-licensed hiring trends denote a decrease in the hiring of substitutes, which is due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm sure that Dr. Vladu has shared many reasons and efforts that we are going above and beyond in our division to ensure that we recruit and make sure subs are in our classrooms. So in partnership with our hiring managers, we continue to strategically expand our recruitment efforts to hire for licensed and non-licensed positions. So you will remember around this time last year, I was very excited and I shared with you our job jamboree. I passed out flyers. We were all excited, and unfortunately we weren't able to have that event. We had to do some hiring innovations. But this year we are very, very excited that we are planning for our YCSD Job Jamboree on March 27th at the Grafton Middle School Complex, because we were ready to go, from 8:30 to 12:30. And while this will be a by appointment only, in-person, all position hiring event, we want to do that because we want to provide administrators with opportunities to interview candidates and highlight why YCSD is such a great place to work. We will review hiring patterns, as you heard a little bit earlier, in VDOE identified critical shortage areas, and with the support of our superintendent and board, we will consider extending teaching offers to candidates for these positions. We are also planning for our annual, all virtual this year, college and university education job fairs across Virginia and other states. And as shared previously, we match our staff to recruit at their alma maters to build strong connections with teacher graduates. Now, as we know, once we recruit teachers and other staff, our charge is to retain them. So if you will take a look at the slide, taking a bottom line approach, retention percentages listed on the screen exclude the total number of employees who separated from YCSD for any reason. As you will note, our overall retention percentages for licensed and non-licensed employees have increased by approximately 1 percentage point. So we're focusing our efforts on retaining our workforce, as we know that consistency has great benefits for students and the health of our organization. These strategies will be discussed briefly later in this presentation. We'll take a quick review of the top 3 reasons why employees indicate that they separate from YCSD. So as on the previous slide you saw, on average, just about 8% of employees have separated in recent years. Retirement remains the #1 reason for employee separation from our school division, with around 1/3 of licensed and just under 1/4 of non-licensed employees retiring over the past 2 years. Over the same time period, the next 2 reasons for licensed and non-licensed employee separations that you see on the screen do account for approximately 65% of all separations from the York County School Division. So now let's review our focus next steps toward employee retention. So we know that a number of factors are related to why employees decide to remain with their employer. And to support the implementation of staff support objectives, all school-based licensed and non-licensed staff will be asked to respond to the Virginia Staff Working Conditions Survey beginning March 1st and ending March 19th. It is critically important that we understand the impact of the pandemic on climate and working conditions and continue to monitor our progress toward recovery. When people are looking to change school divisions, we realize that compensation is a factor that they consider. And as Dr. Shandor and Mr. Bowen just shared, it is important to continue to work on compensation for our division. Also, we recognize that as compared to our region, YCSD strives to maintain competitive and fair benefit rates, a significant factor of consideration for employees who enroll in our benefits package. So now we will look at our staff and student diversity metrics. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 requires that all public school divisions file the federal EEO-5 report biennially, in the reporting year. So 2020 was a reporting year. However, the federal government has moved the 2020 reporting window to July, and that will be the second time that they have moved the reporting window. So in advance of the submission of our official data, we have compiled EEO-5 data that we will share with you. And we will now turn our attention to a review of diversity in our division's workforce as compared to our student diversity. And I just would like to let you know that I will be using the official EEO-5 terminology as I share this data. On this slide, we see that the overall percentage of minority students and of Black African American students continues to increase. Over the next few slides, we will look at demographics related to the diversity makeup of our staff with new hires. We acknowledge that the new hire numbers do not yet closely match our student diversity population, and as such, we must redouble our efforts to recruit a diverse workforce. Now we will review data on classroom teacher diversity. As related to total classroom teacher status, we recognize that there's work to do to close the gap between teacher and student minority and Black African American representation overall. And it's important to YCSD that all of us continue to work at having a teaching force that better mirrors our students. And as our superintendent mentioned earlier and some of our other staff members, this is an area of continued work for us that we are ready to continue to engage in. On this slide, the number in blue indicates where the workforce population demographic percentages exceed their corresponding student demographic percentages. And you'll notice on the slide that while the overall minority percentages for assistant principals declined, the overall minority percentages for principals increased significantly, as have consultants and supervisors of instruction. So this positive increase is the continued work of Dr. Shandor's focus and results on how we as an organization develop leadership from our healthy pipeline of instructional coordinators, assistant principals, and teacher leaders. So now we will identify some next steps as we continue to work on our focused recruiting, as we work on our focus to recruit a diverse teaching workforce. So just to highlight on this slide, last year when we came before you, we talked about a kind of grow your own pipeline of teachers from students who attended our schools and going forward. So we're really, really excited that in partnership with our colleagues in the instruction department, as Ms. Sider shared with you earlier, that we do now have our internal teaching program pipeline, which is debuting in our 21-22 program of studies, and it is the Virginia Teachers for Tomorrow. So we're very, very excited about that. We definitely know that programs like these are shown to be a strategy to increase diversity in school divisions because often teachers generally prefer to teach near where they grew up and attended high school. We also have implemented this year some direct outreach efforts to our historically Black colleges and universities, and we are offering ourselves up now that we all have Zoom and Teams and WebEx and all the other platforms that allow us to participate from a distance. We're really excited to be able to offer up to be guest speakers in classrooms, and so oftentimes educational professionals and schools of ed really look for practitioners to come in and to talk to them. And they're also really excited when human resource professionals want to come in because oftentimes their students are getting ready to graduate and they want to know interview tips, they want to know all these things. And so Dr. Vladu and I, we have offered ourselves up to be able to do that. So we hope to be able to share some very positive updates with you this time next year about those direct outreach efforts. So thank you for this opportunity. And before transitioning to my next update about employee support, because you get me twice, I welcome any questions that you have at this time.
I've got a couple real quick.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Coristan.
You're
The YCSD Jamboree, you mentioned the available to go ahead and give contingent offers there on the spot at the Jamboree. Is that accurate?
We are reviewing that, and we're going to look at our critical shortage areas, and then we're going to match the persons who come with those credentials, and then Dr. Vladu will take those for the appropriate channels for the superintendent to make sure that we can approve to extend those offers. And so what we will be giving them is we will be giving them an offer, a follow-up, but so they will know that, you know, there's a process that will be outlined for them.
Absolutely. That's a great step, though. Okay, that's a proactive or a little bit more aggressive posture. I like it. Hey, real quick, on reasons for separation, I'm looking at licensed. Again, retirement has been generally consistent. I also see accepted a position elsewhere. Is that the only category? Have we thought about breaking that category down farther as to why? Because we've got Power BI, we've got the data collection. I don't know if there are multiple categories inside this larger category?
We have about 11 or 12, and Dr. Vladu, feel
Subcategories
free
in
to
there?
jump in. Subcategories
Okay, all right.
that we use.
All right. Are there 11 or 12 subcategories and accepted a position elsewhere?
No.
But I'm trying, okay. I would just consider it from a data collection standpoint. I know there's some personal dynamics there, and often somebody departing is not willing to share, but I think we can drill down. It would be usul.
Certainly, because one of the things we look at is accepting a position somewhere else. It may not be in the area.
True.
So certainly we will look at that.
And I know there's another category for folks.
Or
that
it may
are
be a
departing.
promotion. It may be a
Sure,
promotion for the reason
sure.
why. So it could be a number of different reasons. So
Gotcha.
Makes sense.
Because as we know, it's going to be particularly competitive in this next year with the influx of federal dollars across the region and I think we can make some assumptions. It's going to be increasingly more difficult. And you know what? Oh, I saw consultants, and I would just offer, when we bring the consultants on, they perhaps are former teachers or staff members. They're also, as you know, a great network to leverage for access to potential teachers or to alum or whatever it might
Yeah,
be.
just one point of clarification. In the EEO5 language, consultants really aligns itself with instructional supervisors
Got it.
and those folks with specialization in their positions to be able to support classroom teachers directly. So think of your educational technology facilitators, your excuse me, boy, I'm dating myself from being here before, our IICs, and things of that, those types, guidance, school counselors, those types of positions that support teachers.
Understand, it's very helpful. You're right, not domain experts from outside the division necessarily. Okay, all right, thank you.
You're
Thanks.
welcome.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing information about like the HBCU recruiting and especially the internal teaching program pipeline. That's exciting to see the benefits we could reap from that. It's just so important for students and young people in these schools to see people in the building who look just like them. I think it's so important to have that connection. So I'm looking forward to see some of the gains that we can get from that. Ms. Geraltz, did you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Awesome. So give me just
Okay.
a second to.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Corbin-Staton, for the update on that strategic goal.
You're
I believe you have the next one as well with the objective for new employee support. Dr.
Yes.
Shandor, would you like to give us some information?
Actually, I'll just turn it right back over to her
Okay.
so she can keep on going. How about that?
Thank you, Dr. Shandor and Chairman Higginbotham and members of the board. And I will now be sharing a strategic plan status update on new employee support structures. So I will provide an update related to the following components of Goal 3, Objective 5, and I will specifically share some ways in which we provide effective support to new employees, results of mid-year surveys administered to some of our new teachers, and next steps related to our work as we implement the objectives of this strategic goal. So while our current context has caused a temporary shift to virtual orientation, to that format for all of our new employees, we remain committed to provide an effective and accessible orientation experience for them that covers the listed topics on the slide. For the safety portion of our orientation, we continue to work in steadfast collaboration with the York Poquoson Sheriff's Department and York Fire and Life Safety. We appreciate their partnership so very much. And safety topics include health and occupational safety, facility overviews, fire and safety drills, and all new employees receive information during orientation about a variety of COVID-19 topics to include enhanced cleaning protocols, as demonstrated so well by Dr. Carroll this evening, and procedures that have been implemented to enhance personal and environmental safety. As Dr. Vladu has shared previously, again in partnership with our instruction department, we offer standalone Teams overview sessions for our daily substitute employees, and long-term substitutes receive necessary training on Canvas and Teams. And as evidenced by orientation feedback forms, new employees share that our orientation is effective and that YCSD is a place where they feel safe to do their best work. New teacher orientation this year was again virtual, and you know, as you will recall, new teacher orientation is our 3-day partnership again between HR and instruction. It's a 3-day event that includes the standard orientation topics that you saw previously, but also immersion in curriculum and instructional practices while welcoming our newest colleagues to YCSD. We're communicating our culture of excellence and inclusivity and modeling effective learning strategies. So this year, our teachers came in, they reported to their designated school site, and they participated in their 3 days of new teacher orientation through Teams. So beyond new teacher orientation, a formal mentor-teacher program is in place to support and engage new teachers during their first year with us. And I want to share that providing support is linked to attracting and retaining the most effective candidates. And you've kind of heard that theme of support throughout tonight. And over the next few slides, I will outline some components of our structured mentor-teacher program. as we expanded our professional development sessions for mentors this year in an effort to provide ongoing support. I'll also share some of our mid-year teacher data with you. So as you know, we're unique in that we offer a trained mentor for all of our teachers, whether they are novice teachers coming straight out of Virginia or a college program somewhere in our country with zero experience in the classroom beyond being their student teaching, or if they're an experienced teacher coming to us. We know that providing support to teachers, no matter what, is necessary, and especially this year. So annually, all new mentors are selected by their building principals, and they participate in new mentor training. So the picture you see on the slide is from our most recent new mentor workshop in the fall of this school year that was facilitated by Dr. Chris Garys. And you'll recall last year I shared with you that he partners with us, and he's from the College of William and Mary, and he's an authority in this field. And as you will remember from last year, one area we've been focused on strengthening is the professional practice of peer observation, a key component to our program. I'm excited to update you on our work in this area through our expanded mentor professional development. So this year, to provide ongoing support for our mentors, the professional development offerings for them were expanded as outlined above, and all sessions were we partnered with Dr. Garys. So this response of expansion was in direct response to feedback received from mentor teachers about topics they wanted to engage in as they continue to build their capacity to support their colleagues and work, have more support as they work around the area of peer observation. And I just want to share that peer observation is a non-evaluative, high-trust professional practice that requires lots of support and a clinical approach, including conversation, observation, reflection, and next steps. So just imagine, that you're in your kitchen and you're making, you're cooking and everything else, and all of a sudden 2 people come in and they say, well, they want to watch you cook. And they want to see everything you're doing. And they have a whole bunch of ways that they think they can help you after you prepare your meal. So you probably would cook a little bit differently. It's just natural when teachers have folks who enter their classrooms, that's their domain, that's their territory. It's them and their students. It's a very safe space. And when folks come in, they're used to being evaluated, but this is really about support. And so what we needed to do was really, our mentor said, hey, Amanda, can we work on building our capacity to engage in this professional practice? And I said, certainly. So 2 really, really cool things real quick. We have some peer observation resources, and so I was able to ask some of our lead mentors to work with Dr. Garys to produce a video resource. Sometimes when you're going out to do something, you kind of need to be renormed or reminded, and so this is a resource they can look at on their own time to kind of really get into what does it take to do a peer observation. And so that's one resource. And then we developed a Teams page where they collaborate, a Teams team. And we have a file in there and a page where they collaborate and they share resources. And we also monitored what do the observation protocols look like that they were using, and we really opened them up. And we also ensured this year that for peer observations, we were able to have the choice of an in-person observation, an online observation teaching when students are live, a recorded portion of a lesson, and you can watch it either a whole lesson or just a snippet, but also of the online or in-person learning environment. Those are critical areas as well. And we recognize that the power of peer observation is when you see someone in your school that you see every day doing an effective practice, it gives you courage to try that practice. And we know that when we engage in more effective practice, our students benefit, and that's what we are all really here for. So it was really, really exciting. As you can tell, I get really excited about this. Okay, move on. All right, new teacher mid-year survey results. So 84 new teachers were surveyed, and the response rate was 81%. On this slide, you will see our mid-year progress toward our peer observation goal, as well as other mid-year indicators of support. As we see, peer observations continue to be in progress at this midway point. And just one of the realities that I know you've heard in reopening updates from schools, and you've definitely heard from my boss, Dr. Vladu, as well as our superintendent, the impact of what our contact tracing may result in, you know, quarantining or be having to stay at home, you know, all of that stuff. It has impacts. I've had many mentors say, hey, we had them all set, ready to go, but now we've had a staffing issue that's come up. And of course, we are going to support our in-person students, and so that takes priority over something sometimes. So it's still in progress. Our goal is that our new teachers are observed by their mentor or a colleague twice, and that mentees observe a colleague once during this school year, okay? So now we will look at some support systems in place for our non-licensed employees. Non-licensed employee support structures include access to training and growth opportunities to include bus drivers, custodians, and clerical secretarial training. In the area of communication this year, all non-licensed employee groups were provided with email addresses to be able to take full advantage of our employee intranet and our Wellness Work SharePoint site, which Dr. Vladu will highlight in just a minute. And we will utilize our working conditions survey to inform our requisite support structures for our non-licensed employees as well. So just briefly, some next steps in the area of new employee support are outlined on this slide. And one of the things for FY22 that we're really looking forward to and excited to be able to come back and talk about is we want to complete our work on our comprehensive onboarding for all of our employee groups. And then what we also want to do is host a new teacher check-in session. So this time next year when we do our mid-year survey and get that data, we want to be able to then have sessions organized. And I know our colleagues in instruction, they are responding. Ms. Skinner just shared some real-time responses based upon feedback. But we realize that the more we're able to respond to what folks need in real time, the better they feel that they have that support and that access to do their best work in our classrooms for our kids. So in closing, we recognize that supporting new employees in a structured and comprehensive way keeps YCSD a great place to work while ultimately benefiting our students and entire school community. And before closing, you are wished a very happy School Board Appreciation Month. We are thankful for your work and support of all of us in YCSD. And I thank you for the opportunity to present this strategic plan status update on new employee support as well as recruitment and retention. And I now welcome any questions that you may have.
So I just have one comment, and thank you for, I made the slide, but it made me, it made me think about the new teacher orientation, because I've attended the last, probably since I've been on the board, every one of them. Going to those and talking to those teachers that come from other divisions, which is about half of what we hire, you can just see the excitement when you talk to them. They're very overwhelmed and can't believe that a school board member or members of the school board would show up to a new teacher orientation, that the superintendent himself would show up. They've worked for a division, some of them 10 years, they hadn't even seen their superintendent.
Yes.
Have never met him in person,
Yep.
or her. So it was very impressive to hear those comments from those teachers and the excitement. And it wasn't just that, it was the whole 3-day event of everything they were taught and everything they had been, because they'd already been to their home school, and then they came there for the 3 days and started in their groups, and they just learned so much, and they thought it was a great program, so keep it up.
Thank you so
good
much.
job.
Yes, our new employees love it when Dr. Shandor, which he often does, drops into our virtual orientations and he greets everyone and says hello. So those things matter.
They matter.
They really do, they
mean a
matter, and
lot.
we're gonna keep them up.
I think that comes down from the top, and just hearing your passion and your excitement about even just presenting this, it's everything. Just the program, I think, is going to continue to grow and become more robust. It's really nice to hear.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Geraltz, did you have any questions?
Just some comments that I know that your job and the job of your team has been completely different this year. So thank you for trying new, innovative ways to do orientations and keep people connected and just make sure they're feeling supported. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
And one other comment, the new teacher mid-year survey results, I'd say that 71% said the current morale level is good, is excellent in this trying year. And I think I've been a firsthand observer of the mentor program, and it definitely works, and it's very much appreciated, and every teacher does need to go through it when they come to the division. It's awesome.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Corbin-Staton, for the update on the new employee support. Our-
Thank you.
Our next, and I believe our last presentation today is for Goal 3, Objective 3.6 on community relation, or community resources. Dr. Shandor.
Thank you, Mr. Higginbotham. Dr. Corbin-Staton, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Don't steal Dr. Carroll's job.
Oh, I'm just doing my hands.
We'll give Dr. Carroll just a minute before we bring in the closer, Dr. Vladu. All right, Dr. Ledoux is going to share some information with us around strategic plan update, goal 3.6, related to community resources. Dr. Ledoux.
Thank you, Dr. Shandor. Chairman Higginbotham, members of the board, and Dr. Shandor, thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on Goal 3.6, or strategic work, community resources. So Goal 3, Objective 6 states that by FY22, we'll identify a comprehensive list of community resources, opportunities, and activities available to York County School Division employees as a result of their employment with the division. Before I begin, I would like to commend Ms. Mary Beth Pluchinski, our benefits specialist, Ms. Elizabeth Osborne, our personnel specialist, and Dr. Corbin-Staton, who just presented, for the work done to provide employees not only with community resources, but additional programs like Wellness Works. First, I would like to begin by sharing that all of the information needed to access benefits, programs, and resources is located on the Wellness Works SharePoint site, which is available to all employees. To make this work, we ensure that all employees have an email address and network credentials, and we're thankful to Dr. Carroll and Mr. Mead, the Director of IT, for making this happen. The Wellness Works SharePoint site includes information on employee discounts, the Employee Assistance Program, or EAP, wellness challenges, and additional resources. These resources include Virginia Retirement System information, student debt solutions, retirement services, legal resources, and ancillary health-related resources. So on this slide, you will see a list of businesses that offer discounts to our employees. I want to thank them publicly for recognizing the work of educators and for partnering with our division in providing these resources to teachers and staff. Next on this slide, you'll see a list of universities that provide a substantial discount for teachers and staff who wish to pursue their education at the master's and doctoral level. In addition to discounts, we have partnered with our insurance provider to develop an employee wellness program. This program is accessible by downloading the EWH application or on the Wellness Works SharePoint site. Prior to launching the program, we survey all of our employees for the interests as well as needs. Based on the data we gleaned from the survey, we partnered with DWH to develop a wellness program that is aligned to the interests of our employees. So on the left on this slide, you see a list of challenges that have been very popular with our staff. We have hundreds of staff members that participated in those challenges, and the positive feedback you'll see in the comments of staff on the right on this slide. I want to share with you that we had over 9,000 hits on this website since it went live back in the end of October. So I want to remind the board as well as all of our employees of this additional resources that is available to all staff members and their families in YCSD. Since 2016, you have funded the Employee Assistance Program, which is an addition from Optima. This program has proved extremely useful for employees in their time of need. As a reminder, employees do not need to have health insurance with the division to have access to this program. Any employee and their families qualify, they have access to at least 5 counseling sessions on each topic. And again, they do not need to have health insurance with the division to have access to the program. So I want to thank you again for continuing to fund this very, very important program for our staff and their families. We have also partnered up with our insurance provider and Optima to provide additional resources, particularly related to COVID. This past March, we provided a mental health toolkit and resources to all of our school principals as well as departments. This toolkit provides specific resources like who, what, where, when, and why on the topics you see in front of you. Things like stress management, depression, behavioral, and substance abuse, and particularly anxiety have become topics of interest to all of our staff during this time when all of us have been either teaching remotely or working in a hybrid or other models in supporting students and their families. So we recognize that this is a difficult time for all of our employees and their families. As we focus on the mission of our school division, our departments will continue to expand the list of employee discounts. Additionally, we will increase traffic to that website through challenges and by advertising to our employees through a variety of channels. Lastly, we have this information in several sites at this time, several locations. We may have a little bit on our website. We may have some on our SharePoint site. We want to consolidate those resources. They're available in one spot where employees can easily access them. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to present the progress update on the strategic goal 3.6. At this time, I am open for your questions and comments.
Great presentation.
Okay. Ms. Geraltz, did you have any questions?
No, thank you.
I want to thank Dr. Bladue for all his efforts and our HR team for what they've done for wellness, because I think we all know we've needed as much wellness as we can get over the last several months. So thank you, Dr. Bladue and Dr. Corbin-State. We appreciate it.
Thank you for sharing that update. That was the last presentation on our agenda. I appreciate all of the information that was presented this evening and the work involved with providing those updates. The board knows and we understand that there are many other things that you can be doing to support the staff and the teachers and the students. So we appreciate you taking the time to put those together for us tonight. Our next regular meeting will be Monday, February 22nd at 7 p.m. in this boardroom. This work session is now adjourned.
There's a need for a closed session.
Yeah, we have to go into special meeting. Now I would like to call to order the February 8th, 2021 special meeting of the York County School Board. Ms. Geraltz has requested she be allowed to participate in the special meeting from a remote location. I will read a statement relating to Ms. Geraltz's request. In accordance with School Board Policy BDD, she is unable to attend the meeting due to a temporary or permanent disability or other medical condition. She asks that the board approve her participation through electronic communication from a remote location, specifically from her home address of 100 Leanne Court, Yorktown, Virginia. Ms. Geraltz, is this correct?
Yes, it is.
Could I have a motion and a second to approve Ms. Geraltz's participation in the February 8th, 2021 special meeting electronically?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve Ms. Geralt's participation in the February 8th, 2021 special meeting electronically from her remote location at 100 Leanne Court, Yorktown, Virginia, due to a temporary or permanent disability or other medical condition.
I'll second.
Mrs. Ford?
Yes, a motion was made by Mr. Schaefer and seconded by Mr. Richardson for Mrs. Geraltz to participate in the special meeting electronically. Mr. Richardson?
Yes.
Mr. Myatt?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Higginbotham?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passed 4-0.
Welcome back to the meeting, Ms. Geraltz. We are now in need of a closed session, so could a board member please take us into closed session?
Mr. Chair, I move that York County School Board convene a closed session to discuss personnel matters relating to specific employees pursuant of the personnel exemption at Section 2.2-3711 Alpha 1 of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Ms. Ford?
Yes, a motion was made by Mr. Myatt and seconded by Mr. Richardson for the York County School Board to convene in closed session. Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Myatt?
Yes.
Mr. Richardson?
Yes.
Ms. Geraltz?
Yes.
Mr. Higginbotham?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passed 5-0.
We are now in closed session. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you.